Welcome to Reformed Thinking. Today we have just a massive collection of ancient lexical sources, grammatical reference texts, and these thick scholarly commentaries sitting right here on the table between us.
Oh, yeah. It's a heavy stack.
It really is. And our mission for this deep dive is to look at a single, profoundly rich Hebrew word that, well, it basically proves that translation is never just a simple math problem.
Right, because we often want translation to be binary. I mean, we want dictionaries to function like an X-ray machine. You break an arm, the X-ray shows the jagged white line, and the doctor points to it and says, broken or not broken.
Exactly. You take a word like dog in English, and it translates to perro in Spanish. It's a clean one-to-one mapping.
Yeah, straight line.
But then you step into the world of Asian Biblical Hebrew, and specifically the language of community, existence, and really divine order, and suddenly that linguistic X-ray machine just completely shatters.
Oh, absolutely.
Because the ancient Hebrew mind simply did not categorize reality the way our modern, highly individualized Western minds do.
No, it forces a complete recalibration. And the word we are examining today is, it's the absolute definition of that required recalibration.
Okay, so the word is Yaḥad.
Right.
Or sometimes you'll hear it pronounced with that guttural back-of-the-throat catch, like Yaḥad.
Yeah, that's the one.
And if you are listening to this, whether you spend hours poring over ancient Semitic languages, or if you're just, fascinated by how the words we use shape human connection and reflect a sovereignly ordered universe, you are in the exact right place.
You really are.
Because if you were to read a standard English translation of the biblical text, you would see Yaḥad rendered dozens of times simply as well as together.
Which, to a modern English speaker, conjures a very shallow image.
Yeah, like what?
Well, just people sitting in a room together.
Mm.
Or items placed on the same shelf together.
Right. Proximity. But as we are going to see from the research today, rendering Yaḥad simply as together is like looking at the Pacific Ocean and calling it a puddle.
It really is.
This material reveals a multidimensional concept that spans human community, the inescapable realities of physical space and time, the humbling nature of our own mortality, and ultimately cosmic divine unity. So by the end of this deep dive, your understanding of what it means to truly be together is going to be radically expanded.
I'm ready.
Okay, let's unpack this. Where do we even begin with the linguistic roots of a word that carries this much weight?
We have to start by looking outside the biblical text itself, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, observing the broader linguistic environment of the ancient Near East.
Mm-hmm.
When you trace the cognates, the related words in sister languages from that same era, you see a very specific foundational idea.
Okay.
So in Ugaritic texts, the root yed functions parallel to the concept of the number one. And in Punic inscriptions, we find the word yahad.
Right, I saw that in the notes.
And in Canaanite dialects, specifically within the Amarna letters, there is this gloss yaduni, which relates strongly to the first-person pronoun I, or the state of being entirely single.
Okay, and the sources point out an Arabic connection as well, right? The word wadani.
Exactly.
I've seen that translated before as carrying a sense of deep solitariness, like being alone.
Yes, and what's fascinating here is how counterintuitive that seems to our modern ears. The bedrock linguistic foundation across the ancient Semitic world for the word together is actually the concept of singularity.
Wow.
Oneness. Solitude, even. It's not about an amalgamation of a bunch of different things. It's about a distinct, singular unit. And when this root transitions into the Hebrew usage, that concept of oneness is, well, it's practically weaponized to describe community.
Man, let's hold on that for a second, because the grammatical categorization in these lexicons immediately introduces a bit of a wrinkle.
Oh, for sure.
The vast majority of the time, the biblical authors use Yaḥad as an adverb. It describes how something is done like singing together or marching together. But the very first major entry we have here highlights a rare, almost peculiar instance where Yaḥad is used as a substantive noun.
Which tells us that before Yaḥad is something you do, it is a state of being.
Right.
It is an ontological reality.
Yeah.
The primary noun definition we're working with is, quote, uniting, community, unitedness.
Okay.
And the standout example the scholars point us to is found in 1 Chronicles chapter 12, verse 18, or verse 17 if you're looking at the Hebrew Bible.
Right. Okay, let me set the context for 1 Chronicles 12. So David is in the wilderness, he's hiding from Saul, and this formidable group of warriors from the tribes of Benjamin and Judah comes out to his stronghold.
Right.
And David goes out to meet them, and he essentially lays down an ultimatum. He says, if you've come in peace to help me, my heart will be knit to yours. But the Hebrew phrasing there is striking. Literally translated, David says, I will have a heart toward you for unitedness.
For unitedness, yeah, Yaḥad.
I have to push back on that translation a bit, though.
How so?
Because having a heart for unitedness sounds incredibly clunky in English.
It does.
It sounds like a modern corporate mandate for, I don't know, a corporate retreat, like synergy, team building.
Right. Trust falls in the woods.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Is David just asking for ancient political alignment, or is this text demanding something heavier? Because to me, if we are just talking about working together, it feels like taking two pieces of metal and tying them tightly with a piece of twine.
Sure.
Sure, they are together and they can be moved as one unit, but fundamentally they remain two completely separate autonomous entities. But this noun form, lexical, it feels more like welding.
Oh, I like that.
You take a torch, you apply intense, blinding heat, and the molecules of those two separate pieces of metal literally melt into one another. The seam disappears entirely.
Your welding analogy hits the absolute center of the theological weight of this noun. Yeah. David isn't asking these warriors to coordinate their schedules or, sign a mutual defense treaty. He is demanding an ontological shift. The noun Yaḥad describes a state where the individuals undergo a fundamental transformation into a single, indivisible entity. There is a complete fusion of will, of purpose, and existence.
Wow. And the lexicon reinforces that by pointing to Deuteronomy 33.5, where Yaḥad is used to mean totality. It describes the totality of the leaders of the people gathered.
Yes.
It implies a structure where if a single piece is missing, the entity itself ceases to exist in its true form.
And that specific concept of Yaḥad as an ontological state of being, that totality, was so potent that it actually became the defining identity marker for the community that authored the Dead Sea Scrolls centuries later.
Oh, yes. The source notes reference the work of Shemariah Talman in the journal Vetus Testamentum. I read his breakdown on the Qumran community, and it's just wild. They didn't just use Yaḥad to describe their living arrangements out there in the desert.
No, they adopted it as their proper name. They called their entire sect the Yaḥad.
Which carries massive theological implications. I mean, to join them wasn't about paying dues or subscribing to a newsletter. When someone entered the Qumran community, they believed they were entering into the totality.
Right.
In their theology, the rest of the world, even the rest of religious Israel and Jerusalem, was fragmented. The Qumran sect viewed themselves as the singular, unified remnant of God's people.
Exactly.
To be outside the Yaḥad was to be disjointed from reality itself.
It reveals how seriously the ancient mind took this concept.
Oh.
But if the noun describes the state of being welded together, that ontological reality of oneness, we then have to ask how that state of being manifests in movement.
What do you mean?
Well, a welded piece of metal is a static object, but humanity is dynamic.
Ah, right. And that leads directly into the adverbial uses, which absolutely dominate the lexicons here. How does a welded community move?
Right.
The sources break this down into three highly distinct dimensions.
Right.
Community in action, community in place, and community in time.
Often these dimensions overlap in the text, but
Yeah.
usually the author brings one of them to the absolute forefront to make a specific point.
Okay, let's test the action dimension first. The lexicon offers two wildly different scenarios to map the boundaries of this word. On one end, we have Ezra 4.3.
Okay.
The Israelites have returned from exile and are attempting to rebuild the temple in Jerusalem. Some adversaries approach, offering to help with the construction, but the leaders of Israel flatly reject them, saying, "We alone will build to the Lord." But the literal Hebrew there reads, "We together will build."
Right. It functions as an exclusive unity. They are stating that their specific community, which is welded together by a shared covenant with God, is the only entity capable of executing this unified action. The action of building is entirely restricted to the Yaḥad.
But then I look at the other example provided for action, and it completely subverts that constructive, cooperative idea.
Oh, 1 Samuel 17.
Yes, 1 Samuel 17.10, the story of David and Goliath. Goliath stands in the valley, taunting the Israelites, and he roars, "Give me a man and let us fight together." He uses Yaḥad. Wait, combat is unity. I mean, I always read Goliath's challenge as a simple demand for a representative duel. But you're telling me the Hebrew word he uses implies he wants to form a unified bond with David through mutual destruction.
It seems totally paradoxical, but yes. This perfectly illustrates lexical category LN 92.26, which defines Yaḥad as a marker of reciprocation between two persons or groups.
Ah.
In the Hebrew mindset, engaging in mortal combat binds you to your adversary in a singular shared event. The intense reciprocity of the violence creates a dark, destructive Yaḥad. So whether it is the cooperative action of laying stones for a temple or the violent action of trying to sever a man's head, the participants are locked into a single reality defined by that action.
Wow. Okay, so action alone can forge Yaḥad. But what about physical proximity? Because, when I think of togetherness, my mind immediately goes to geography, occupying the same room.
Right, and the place dimension is heavily represented in the text too. Psalm 133.1 is the classic example. Behold, how good and how pleasant it is for brethren to dwell together in unity.
Right.
There is yahad indicating people dwelling in the exact same physical space. We also see it in 2 Samuel 10.15, describing an army gathering together. The geographic convergence of separate soldiers into a single location creates the yahad.
I have a theory about that, though.
Let's hear it.
Doesn't physical proximity have to be a prerequisite for unified action? You can't build a temple together if one guy is in Jerusalem and the other is in Babylon.
True.
And you can't fight a death match from 100 miles away. It seems like the dimension of place is just the necessary container for the dimension of action.
In many human contexts, that's absolutely true. You need the container of place. But the ancient Hebrew linguistic structure refuses to be limited by physical space, which is why the third dimension time is so crucial.
Okay, lay that out for me.
Lexical category LN 67.17 through 67.64 categorizes yahad as describing events happening all at once or at the same time. The prophet Isaiah provides an intense example of this in Isaiah 42.13. Speaking with the voice of God, the prophet describes a moment of sudden, overwhelming, divine action. I will pant and gasp at the same time.
Right.
The yahad in this sentence has absolutely nothing to do with two different people standing next to each other. It describes two visceral actions converging in the exact same millisecond.
It captures the sheer synchronicity of the moment. And if we follow that thread of synchronicity, it leads us to what is arguably the most majestic, cosmic use of the word yahad in all of ancient literature.
Job 38.
Exactly. Job 38.7.
The whirlwind passage. Job has been demanding an audience with God to explain his suffering, and God finally answers out of the storm, interrogating Job about the architecture of the universe. Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth?
God continues describing the dawn of creation, saying, when the morning stars sang together and all the sons of God shouted for joy. The Hebrew phrase is bron yatad, when they shouted together. And this is where my modern imagination totally fails me if I'm not careful. Because when I hear stars singing together, I picture a massive choir standing on cosmic risers.
Right, everyone in robes.
Right. They're in the same room, taking a breath at the same time, singing the same sheet music. It's a nice, orderly picture. But if we apply everything we've just learned about yahad, it shatters that choir riser image entirely.
How so?
Because yahad demands an overlapping of purpose, space, and time on a scale that human minds just struggle to process. Imagine the stars not just occupying the same sky, which is merely the dimension of place, but shouting in absolute, perfect, flawless unison across light years of vacuum.
Wow.
Every single celestial body erupting with a specific frequency at the exact same microsecond of creation. It's not a choir, it's like quantum synchronization.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture of the Hebrew worldview, what you're describing as quantum synchronization is exactly how they understood divine order.
Oh.
To the biblical authors, reality was not fractured. True, ultimate yahad required a total convergence. The stars aren't merely existing in proximity. Their existence is a synchronized, cooperative action orchestrated by a sovereign creator.
Yes.
The yahad of the morning stars is a decreed harmony. It is the design of the cosmos itself, actively reflecting the singular purpose of God. Everything doing exactly what he ordained it to do at the exact moment he decreed it.
It's just a staggering thought. A universe so tightly welded by the Creator's intent that the ignition of billions of stars is recorded as a single, unified shout. But, and this is where it gets heavy, the lexicons don't let us stay gazing at the heavens for long. As we move into the poetic literature, yahad shifts from a beautiful, triumphant cosmic choir to something incredibly dark.
Yeah.
Something deeply humbling.
The lexicons point out that in poetry, yahad is often translated as wholly, altogether, or alike. It functions as a synonym for the word kulam, meaning all of them. But yahad carries a much more forcible weight.
Okay, unpack that.
It doesn't just mean everyone in the group is present. It means without exception. It becomes a word of absolute leveling.
Let's look at Psalm 62.970. The English text reads, if placed on the scales, they are altogether lighter than vanity. They in this verse refers to human beings specifically. The text mentions both those of low degree and those of high degree, the poor and the rich. And the psalmist says they are yahad, made of vanity.
It strips away every single societal illusion we construct. I mean, a monarch and a peasant might seem infinitely far apart in human hierarchies, but when they are placed on the scales of divine justice and eternal reality, they are yachad.
Yeah.
They are entirely, jointly, without distinction, constituted of vapor. Total depravity, essentially. They have nothing of substance to offer.
The brutal honesty of that continues in Psalm 49. Verses 3 and 11 explicitly state that the fool and the brutish person perish alike. The word there is yahad. And then in Job 34.15, there is this massive, sweeping statement. All flesh shall perish together, and man shall turn again unto dust.
The lexicon is very direct in its definition of this usage. All are light flesh, i.e. mortal.
And man, this creates a severe cognitive dissonance for me because togetherness in our modern culture is a universally warm concept, you know?
Oh, absolutely.
We tell each other we're in this together, we host get-togethers, it's cozy, it implies safety, friendship, mutual support. But here, in the ancient text, yahad acts as the ultimate equalizer, and the measuring stick is the grave.
Yeah.
It's the Grim Reaper's ruler. Is the text essentially arguing that death and human frailty are the ultimate community builders? Because that is a terrifying prospect.
Well, no, it's not that death builds the community. It's that God's sovereign reality exposes the community that already exists beneath our pride.
Oh, okay.
The lexicon classifies this usage under LN 59.23 through 59.34, defining it as a unity and totality of exactly two of a class, kind, or entity. From our ground-level human perspective, we see massive, insurmountable differences between people. We categorize by wealth, intelligence, power. We build walls. But from the vantage point of the Creator, looking down at our inherent frailty and our fallen nature, there is only a single class of humanity.
We are all dust.
We are yachad in our total mortality. We are yachad in our complete inability to save ourselves. The word forcibly unites what human pride desperately tries to separate.
It's a linguistic hammer. It completely smashes the pedestals we put ourselves on. Whether you spend your life building a massive empire or sweeping a street, the reality of the dust makes you yachad with every other human being who has ever lived.
Which demonstrates how a single grammatical choice carries profound theological weight. And it's precisely why scholars spend entire careers debating the nuances of this word in various verses.
I bet.
The commentaries included in our source material reveal that translating yachad is often a fierce interpretive debate.
Let's transition into those debates because human beings naturally resist that kind of humbling divine perspective. How does the language reflect our resistance? The lexicon brings up the emphatic negative, the phrase lu yachad, specifically found in Hosea 11.7.
Right. The lexicon categorizes lo yachad under LN 69.2 through 69.6, defining it as by no means, surely not, certainly not. Is a marker of absolute emphatic negation.
So if the noun form of yachad means an ontological welding of two things, lu yachad isn't just saying, well, they drifted apart.
No, not at all.
The Hebrew idiom is declaring they are untogethered to the absolute maximum degree. It is a total violent cancellation of unity. Zero cohesion.
Yes. And Hosea 11.7 is notoriously difficult to translate precisely because of this phrase. The Anchor Yale Bible Commentary notes by Francis the Thirst Anderson and David Noel Friedman devote significant space to unpacking this exact verse.
What's the context there?
The context is God speaking about Israel's rebellion. When humanity rebels against the divine order, they don't just experience a slight disagreement with God. They enter a state of lu yachad. It is a profound, terrifying disunity. It's the unraveling of the weld, the molecules being ripped apart at the subatomic level.
Wow. The terror of being fundamentally untogethered from the Creator. That sets the stage perfectly for one of the most intense scholarly debates in our sources. Let's look at Micah 2.12.
Okay, yeah.
This verse is heavily referenced in Stephen G. Dempster's Two Horizons Old Testament commentary. The prophet Micah delivers a message from God about the remnant of Israel, a people who are currently scattered, broken, and exiled. And God says, I will surely gather the remnant of Israel. I will put them together, yashad like sheep of Basra.
On the surface, I will put them together. Seems fairly straightforward. But scholars fiercely debate the primary dimension of yachad being utilized here.
Right. I'll take the side of physical closeness, the place dimension. When you manage livestock, or honestly, when you try to manage a group of toddlers at a birthday party, getting everyone into the exact same physical space is an absolute nightmare.
Oh, yeah. Like herding cats.
Right. It requires constantly moving the boundaries, shoving them toward the center. So when God says, I will put them yachad, He's promising to physically draw this scattered, exiled flock back into one sheepfold. It's about geographic restoration.
That is a highly defensible reading. But Dempster and others argue that this misses the theological majesty of the verse by focusing too heavily on the sheep rather than the shepherd.
Interesting.
If we apply the time dimension, the concept of simultaneity, the entire meaning shifts.
Okay, walk me through the simultaneity argument.
If yahad here means all at once, God isn't describing the exhausting piecemeal process of herding stubborn animals over a long period. He's declaring a sovereign, unilateral act. In one sweeping, irresistible motion of his will, God snaps the entire scattered flock back into absolute, simultaneous unity. It's not about the sheep deciding to walk toward the same pasture. It's about the sheer majestic power of the shepherd's effectual calling.
Oh.
The gathering happens yahad instantly, completely and without fail, because it is his sovereign decree.
That completely changes the imagery. It's the difference between trying to herd animals with a stick and throwing a massive cosmic switch that instantly synchronizes hundreds of pendulum clocks across the globe.
Yes.
The unity of the flock isn't a sociological achievement of the sheep. It is a divine achievement enacted upon them. The yahad is the evidence of God's unilateral power to gather his own.
This raises an important question about how God's power applies to different situations. Mitchell Dayhood's commentary on Psalm 141.2 Gil touches on this exact mechanism of divine timing.
Let me look at that.
The psalmist prays, "Let the wicked fall into their own nets, while that I withal escape."
Okay, and the word translated with all are at the same time as yahad.
Right, the literal Hebrew reads, "While I yahad pass on." The lexicon categorizes this strictly under the time-alone dimension. It describes the poetic synchronization of two diametrically opposing destinies.
It's a perfectly choreographed mechanism of justice. At the exact millisecond, the wicked step into the snare and the ruin is absolute. That is the exact simultaneous microsecond the righteous pass by unharmed.
Exactly.
The yahad is the hinge of the event. It connects justice and mercy into a single unified decree. It proves that God isn't distracted, dealing with one issue and then turning to the other. His justice and his mercy operate yahad.
And the scale of that justice doesn't alter the math of his sovereignty. Look at the notes from the Expositor's Bible commentary on Job 34.29.
Let me find that one.
It says, "When he gives quietness, who then can make trouble? And when he hides his face, who then can behold him? Whether it be done against a nation or against a man only."
The word translated as only or alike at the end of that verse is translating the concept of yahad.
Meaning that God's sovereign actions, whether granting profound peace or hiding his face in judgment, apply yahad to an entire empire or to a single solitary individual. They are completely alike in their vulnerability to his will.
Right.
A massive nation has no more ability to resist the hidden face of God than one single man does. They are leveled.
It continually forces us to look up. Every usage of this word, whether it's the cosmic singing of stars, the humbling reality of the grave, or the simultaneous execution of justice, demands that we view unity and existence from the perspective of the heavens, not from the dirt.
Absolutely.
And I think that realization paves the way beautifully into the final section of our sources today, the names.
The proper nouns. This is where the theology embedded in the ancient language becomes intensely, unavoidably personal.
Right at the very end of the lexical entry, almost like an appendix, the sources list several proper names that are derived from or sit immediately adjacent to the root yahad.
Yep.
The first one is jado, found in 1 Chronicles 5.14. The lexicon translates this name simply as united,
which is the literal embodiment of the ontological noun form we discussed at the very beginning. Imagine walking through your life with the given name that declares your entire identity is unitedness.
But the names that follow jado are where the real pattern emerges. We see a cluster of names combining this root concept with the divine names El or Jehovah.
Okay, let's go through them.
First, there is Jadil. The lexicon notes it derives from a related root, chada, and translates it as whom God makes glad.
Following that is Jediah, translated whom Jehovah makes glad.
Then we have Jehiel, derived from the root chaya, meaning to live. The name means whom God preserves alive.
And finally, Jehaziel and Jehaziah, from the root chaza, meaning to see. These are translated as whom God watches over or who looks to God.
So we have to ask, what is the theological argument being made by this arrangement? The scholars who compiled these lexicons deliberately place these names about God making people glad, God preserving people alive, and God watching over them, right alongside the entries for yahad, for absolute unitedness. What does that reveal about the biblical worldview? Are these concepts just randomly placed next to each other because they sound similar, or are they inextricably linked?
If we look closely at the theology of the text we've studied today,
Yeah.
they are absolutely linked. This addresses the core tension of human society. In our modern world, we desperately try to manufacture unity from the bottom up.
We really do.
We try to build it through shared political interests, social contracts, economic alliances, or even mutual hatred of a common enemy.
Yeah.
We use human tools to try and forge Yaḥad. But the lexical proximity of these names tells a completely different, top-down theological story.
Which means true unity isn't something we can build. It has to be sustained from above.
Precisely. In the biblical text, true unitedness isn't a sociological phenomenon you can engineer. It is the direct result of divine preservation. Why is a community truly united? Because God preserves it alive. Why does a community experience the deep, resounding gladness of being together? Because God makes them glad jadil. How does a community maintain its shared purpose in a chaotic world? Because God watches over it.
That is a staggering paradigm shift. The community is held together exclusively by the one who watches over it. If God is not actively preserving, if God is not granting gladness, if God is not watching, the yahad instantly shatters.
It falls apart entirely.
It fractures back into the absolute disunity of Yaḥad. Without the sovereign preservation of the Creator, human nature defaults to fragmentation, self-interest, and ultimately, the dust.
And that reality ties every single thread of our deep dive together into one cohesive picture.
It really does.
The ontological oneness of David's warriors in 1 Chronicles was a bond forged by a shared anointing. The cosmic symphony of the morning stars in Job 38, shouting together in perfect quantum synchronization, is the sheer obedience of creation to its designer. The humbling, leveling reality of Psalm 49, where the rich and poor perish alike, strips away the false unities we build out of pride. All of these are expressions of a reality that is fundamentally governed, sustained, and judged by God. Yaḥad is the fingerprint of divine order pressed onto a chaotic world.
It is the gravitational force holding the spiritual universe intact. Man, we have covered an immense amount of ground today.
We have.
We started by looking at the ancient Ugaritic and Arabic roots, discovering that at the very core of Yaḥad is the concept of a singular solitary unit. We unpacked that rare substantive noun form, the idea of a heart given over entirely to unitedness, an ontological welding of souls where the seams disappear.
We charted how that static noun explodes into the three-dimensional dynamic world of the biblical text, the convergence of action where people build temples or fight to the death locked in intense reciprocity, the convergence of place where armies gather or brothers dwell in physical proximity, and the astonishing convergence of time where events happen simultaneously, perfectly orchestrated by a sovereign decree.
We confronted the dark, humbling reality of Yaḥad as the ultimate equalizer. The grim realization that beneath all our human striving, our wealth, and our class divisions, we are Yaḥad, wholly, altogether, and alike, constituted of vanity and utterly dependent on unmerited grace.
We navigated the lexical variations in the scholarly debates, seeing how a single word dictates whether a prophetic text is describing the physical pushing together of a gathered flock, or the irresistible, instantaneous power of the shepherd who calls them sovereignly.
And finally, we saw how the ancient names of Israel weave the concept of unity inextricably into the preserving, watchful, and joy-giving nature of God himself.
It has been a truly exhaustive journey through the lexical landscape.
So, to you, the listener, how does this change the way you see the world? The next time you are reading a text or sitting in a room with your family or gathering with your community and you hear the word together, I challenge you not to settle for the shallow definition of mere proximity. Don't just think of items placed on the same shelf. I want you to think of Yaḥad. I want you to look for the totality of shared existence, a convergence of space, time, and purposeful action, a unity that levels our human pride and exposes our shared frailty, a oneness that can only truly be preserved by the one who watches over us from above.
And as we close, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought from the source material to mull over long after this audio ends.
Lay it on us.
We have spent a lot of time today talking about the beauty of the stars singing Yaḥad and the goodness of brothers dwelling Yaḥad. But the lexicon points us to one final jarring verse, Psalm 74.8.
Okay.
The context is an invading army, enemies of God, looking at the sanctuaries in the land. And the enemy says in their heart, let us destroy them completely. But the literal Hebrew translation utilizing our word reads, let us destroy them Yaḥad, altogether, all at once.
Complete synchronized annihilation.
Yes. If this single word, Yaḥad, possesses the linguistic capacity to describe both the beautiful, harmonious, divinely orchestrated singing of the morning stars at the dawn of creation and the absolute sweeping, simultaneous destruction of an enemy tearing down a sanctuary.
Right.
Well, what does that say about the sheer neutral power of unity?
Wow.
Unity, in and of itself, is not an inherent moral good. It is a mechanism. It is an amplifier. When sinful fallen humanity unites in rebellion, the yahad amplifies destruction. It builds towers to heaven in arrogance. But when humanity is united under the sovereign preservation and joy of God, the yahad amplifies glory.
It's a mirror reflecting whatever source is driving it. So the question I leave you with is this. What are you uniting with? What is the yachad in your life, and what is it amplifying? Is it amplifying your own vanity, or is it amplifying the joy of the one who preserves you?
That is the ultimate diagnostic question.
It really is. We started this deep dive talking about the comfort of an X-ray machine, the human desire for a clean, binary diagnosis of reality. The X-ray gives us the illusion that if we can just see the lines clearly enough, we have the power to fix the break ourselves. But Yaḥad proves that the X-ray machine was always broken.
Yeah.
The true nature of our togetherness, our unity, and our very existence isn't something we can engineer from the ground up or cast in plaster. It is a profound, demanding, majestic reality that forces us to look completely beyond the jagged lines of our own efforts and trust entirely in the hands of the great physician, the only one who can weld the fractured pieces of this world back into one. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah.
Keep reading, keep questioning, and keep reflecting on the profound words that shape our understanding of God and each other.